Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today. We are about to embark on a seriously breathtaking expedition. We're literally leaving the visible world behind and zooming way, way down into the microscopic universe. It's this bustling, totally invisible living world that exists all around us, and yeah, even right inside us. So let's kick things off with a little riddle. What do you, a giant ostrich roaming the savannah, and the yeast sitting in your bread dough actually have in common? Well, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But if we zoom in close enough, it hits you. Every single one of us is constructed from the exact same microscopic building blocks of life, cells. Here's our flight path for today's explainer. First will be unlocking the invisible world. Then we'll look at the anatomy of a cell, compare plant versus animal cells, meet the microorganisms, and finally figure out if microbes are our friends or foes. All right, let's jump right into part one, unlocking the invisible world.
You know, for most of human history, we were completely blind to this hidden domain. But looking at this timeline, it's wild to see how fast our understanding exploded the second we actually had the right lens. In 1590, Janssen invents the first microscope. Boom. Then by 1665, Robert Hooke makes this huge breakthrough observing cork. Just a few years after that, in 1674, Leeuwenhoek actually spots living cells moving around. And it all culminates around 1838 when Schleiden and Schwann proposed the cell theory, basically the game-changing idea that all plants and animals are just made of cells.
Check out Robert Hooke's actual drawing here. When he used his super primitive microscope to look at an incredibly thin slice of cork, he didn't just see a solid mass. Instead, he saw these tiny honeycomb-like compartments. They kind of reminded him of the small, simple rooms that monks lived in, which were called cells. And well, the name just stuck. Now, even though they share the same name, cells come in some amazingly different sizes. Get ready for a little scale shock here. The largest single cell in the world, it's an ostrich egg. It's a massive 170 by 130 millimeters, totally visible to the naked eye. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the smallest cell is a type of bacteria known as PPLO. It's just 0.1 to 0.5 microns. The size variation in the cellular world is just, honestly, staggering. Moving right along to section 2, anatomy of a cell. Let's see what's inside. Zooming way into the microscopic level, take a look at this human cheek cell. It's got this thin outer cell membrane keeping the whole shebang together. But I want to draw your attention to that dark central structure, the nucleus. And surrounding the nucleus is this jelly-like stuff called cytoplasm. This cytoplasm is literally the lifeblood of the cell. It holds all the other tiny organ-like structures, we call them organelles, suspended right there in place while they do their jobs. Think of the cell like a bustling city, which perfectly explains what these complex-sounding organelles actually do. The nucleus, that's your control center, calling the shots with genetic instructions. The mitochondria is the powerhouse, pumping out the energy the cell needs to survive. Lysosomes are your garbage disposal, using enzymes to clean up waste. And the ribosomes are these busy protein factories, making whatever the cell needs to build and repair itself. It's amazing. Every single organelle has a crucial everyday job. Okay, section 3, plant versus animal cells. Let's look at the different architectural styles. Notice how beautifully form follows function here. Plant cells actually need to stand up tall without a skeleton, right? So they have this really rigid outer cell wall made of cellulose. Plus, they pack chloroplasts to make their own food from the sun and a giant central vacuole to store sap. Animal cells, on the flip side, don't have that rigid wall. They're much more flexible. They rely on numerous lysosomes for waste management and use centrosomes to help out when it's time for the cell to divide. On to section 4, meet the microorganisms. Welcome to the invisible wilderness. Let's zoom back out from the guts of a single cell for a second and just appreciate the crazy physical diversity of this single-celled wilderness. Much like animals out in the wild, bacteria come in very specific, distinct shapes. You've got these spherical ones called cocci, the rod-shaped ones called bacilli, and these cool, twisted, spirally shaped spirilla. They're all highly specialized for wherever they happen to live. But hey, the diversity doesn't stop at bacteria. We've got protozoa and algae in the mix too. Check out the amoeba, right there. Its shape is just completely all over the place. It moves around and hunts by stretching out these false feet, or pseudopodia. Meanwhile, algae can either be tiny single-celled organisms swimming around with whip-like flagella, or they can gang up to form these massive multicellular colonies. Now, we've established that cells are the absolute building blocks of life. But what happens when we stumble onto something that totally messes with that definition? Enter the virus. A virus is what we call an obligate parasite. Outside of a host cell, it's basically inert, non-living. It doesn't eat, it doesn't grow, but the very second it slips inside a living cell, it completely hijacks that cell's machinery to print thousands of copies of itself. It basically sits right on this bizarre, fuzzy boundary between the living and the non-living. Just look at the crazy geometric, almost sci-fi structures of these viruses. I mean, check out the bacteriophage in the center. It literally looks like an alien moonlander. These obligate parasites are far, far smaller than any known cell. We're talking 0.015 to zero point 0.2 microns. They're so incredibly tiny that a regular microscope won't even cut it. Scientists literally have to use super powerful electron microscopes just to catch a glimpse of them.
And that brings us to Section 5, Microbes, Friends and Foes. Let's look at their everyday impact.
Zooming all the way back out to our human scale, do you remember that little riddle from the start of the explainer about how we're connected to yeast? Well, here's the secret to how yeast actually makes your bread rise. Through a process called fermentation, the microscopic yeast gobbles up the sugar in your dough. As it snacks, it breaks down that sugar, creates a bit of alcohol, and burps out bubbles of carbon dioxide gas. That gas gets trapped, pushes the dough outward, and boom, you get soft, fluffy, perfectly risen bread. I know we usually think of microbes as just, germs that make us sick, but looking at this list, an overwhelming number of them are absolutely vital allies. Take lactobacillus. It's the magic little bacterium that turns milk into curd and cheese. The penicillium fungus, that gives us life-saving antibiotics. Out in the fields, rhizobium bacteria live in plant roots and literally pull nitrogen right out of the air to naturally fertilize the soil. We even use specialized engineered bacteria to gobble up toxic oil spills in cleaner oceans. They're basically microscopic superheroes. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a seriously mind-bending thought. You are this massive, complex organism made up of roughly 30 trillion human cells. But right this second, there are an estimated 39 trillion bacterial cells living on your skin and inside your gut, keeping you alive. You are, quite literally, a walking, talking ecosystem. So, when you really think about it, who's actually in charge here? Thank you so much for coming along on this incredible journey through the invisible living world. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.